Okay, so the answer I'm going to give you, somebody listening is going to say, that's just simplistic. Okay. The problem I think we have is that we're always looking for the silver bullet or the home run hit that's going to make everything different because we've been Disney programmed. Wonder Woman is going to fight Ares and destroy him and everything's going to be good. Rocky is going to come back from almost being knocked out, beat up the bad guy, and everything's going to be good.
Yeah, all in 2 hours.
Oh, it's amazing. The problem is it's not how it works.
Yeah.
But the Christian world is always looking for that. How many times has the Christian churches all get together behind a big event that's going to happen, and then nothing really eternal happens out of it? I've been involved in those. I've led some of those. That's why I don't do many of them anymore, because it's exciting, but you've just put all these hours and all these effort into something that eternally didn't have much of an effect.
Welcome to the Daron Earlewine podcast, where we awaken you to become who you were born to be. Here's your host, Daron Earlewine.
Welcome back to the Daron Earlewine podcast, episode 41. We are climbing ahead, episode after episode. Thanks for downloading this episode of the Daron Earlewine podcast. Thanks for any subscriptions. So many new people joining us on YouTube. I got to give actually a big shout out, big round of applause for Rashad Cunningham. Rashad went to work after his episode came out and was like, listen, I'm getting us to 300 subs. And he did. Got all of his friends, family, a couple enemies actually, to join us on the YouTube subscriptions. Thank you for those of you that are joining us. If you haven't, go over there and check it out. Or if you want to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or even Spotify, wherever you watch or listen to the podcast, I'm just glad you do. And we're sitting down today with Chad Temple. You probably don't know Chad. You might know him. You're about to know him. He is an amazing guy who has been doing life-changing ministry here on the northeast side of Indianapolis for the past 30 years. And if there's a phrase to describe Chad Temple, it would be this: a long obedience in the same direction. Borrowing that quote from Eugene Peterson, it'll make more sense later. But I just want to say thank you for downloading this episode. It means the world to me. It's great to grow in community with you guys. Would love to hear from you. Love the text messages and emails I've been getting from you guys and girls. And you can reach out to me if you want. Text me at 317-550-5070. You can also reach out and send me an email, Daron@blackbirdmission.com. Would love to hear from you. Here's a question I have for you guys is this: when was the last time you got lost? Can you remember the last time you got lost? I don't remember. I was trying to think about this. The last time I can remember getting lost, and here's the deal. Here's the reason that we don't get lost anymore is because we have GPS in our phone, right? It's almost completely impossible to get lost. I think the last time I can remember getting lost is in the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college. My parents moved to a small town in southern Indiana. They only lived there for like a year. And I needed a summer job, and so I started delivering pizzas at Pizza Hut, which was kind of cool because I like pizza, and it was fun to drive around. But here's the problem. It was before I had a phone that had GPS on it or like maps. And so literally I can remember I would get the order for the houses I was going to go to. I'd never lived in this town. I didn't know how to get around it. And I would study. They had this big map on the back room of the Pizza Hut. And I would try to memorize where I was going to house 1, house 2, house 3. And then I actually had a real deal map in my car. But I can remember multiple times getting out kind of in the country and being fully lost and being like, this person's not getting their pizza because I have no freaking idea where I'm at. It's a terrible feeling to get to a place where you know that you're lost, especially if you don't feel like you have any way to get back to where you're supposed to be. You don't have a guide. And that's what we're going to dig into with Chad's conversation today, is the need for us to have a guide. One thing that Chad's going to say that I thought was very, very meaningful. Chad grew up in upstate New York, did some ministry in Brooklyn, New York, and some tough neighborhoods there, and then came and has been serving for 30 years in one of the rougher neighborhoods of Indianapolis. And Chad says, you know what, Daron, here's what I see. The connection between upstate New York to Indy. The situation may be a little different. The neighborhood may be a little more violent. But basically, he says people are on a journey and they don't know where to go. It doesn't matter the people he's met that he's walked through for now over 3 decades. He says, here's the common thread. Most people are just on a journey and they don't know where to go. What they need is a mentor. They need a guide. They need, if you will, an internal GPS. And so what I want you to think about as we get into the episode with Chad is, where are you at on that continuum and that idea? Are you wandering through life right now, kind of stumbling through the darkness, continuing to make mistakes in your life, and it's because you do not have an internal GPS to guide you towards wisdom? And what you're going to be invited into in this episode is to realize that actually Jesus is that internal GPS, the Holy Spirit within you. Or are you actually someone who needs to be like an iPhone for someone? And by that, I mean like a mentor, a guide, that you could come alongside people and say, listen, you know what you're lacking? Wisdom, direction. And I can actually help you in this journey. As I was reflecting on Chad's episode, my mind went back to just so many passages in the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament. And I've been reading Proverbs more often recently because I've been challenging my sons to just basically dive into Proverbs and allow it to be some guardrails for them to find discipline in God's word, because there's 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs, and I'm just challenging them to read the proverb of the day, right? Whatever the date is, just read that chapter in Proverbs and be guided in wisdom for living. And in Proverbs chapter 5 or 4, actually, here's the kind of two paths that I want you to think about as you're listening to Chad's interview here. In Proverbs chapter 4, verses 10 through 19, it says this: two pathways. My son, if you will take the time to stop and listen to me and embrace what I say, you will live a long and happy life, full of understanding in every way. I have taken you by the hand in wisdom's ways, pointing you to the path of integrity. We need a mentor like this father in Proverbs. Do you have one? Could you be one, is the question. Your progress will have no limits when you come along with me, and you will never stumble as you walk along the way. So receive my correction, no matter how hard it is to swallow, for wisdom will snap you back into place. Her words will be invigorating life to you. Do not detour into darkness or even set foot on that path. Stay away from it. Don't even go there, for troublemakers are restless if they are not involved in evil. They are not satisfied until they have brought someone harm. This understanding that the life that we're living, right, everybody's on this journey and they're not sure where to go. And the fact is, it's not a safe or neutral environment. There are troublemakers. There are forces of evil that are trying to destroy, they're trying to distract, that are trying to compromise your ability to become who you were born to be. That's why people need mentors. That's why we need an internal guidance and direction of God in our life. They feed on darkness and drink until they're drunk on the wine of wickedness. But the lovers of God walk on the highway of light, and their way shines brighter and brighter until the perfect day. But the wicked walk in thick darkness, like those who travel in fog, and yet don't have a clue why they keep stumbling. Do you need wisdom? Do you need a mentor? Do you have wisdom? Could you become a mentor? Questions to ponder today, because here's the deal, is you may be at a place where you don't have a clue of why you keep stumbling in life. You need help. You need guidance. You're not broken. You're not bad. You're not unable to succeed in life. You just need some help. And you may be listen to the podcast. You go, you know what, Daron, I'm on this thing. I'm trying to find my purpose in life, but I don't know where to start. I don't know who could use my help. Here's the deal, is could you just see any place in life, any person in life, and say, you know what, do I have some wisdom that I could walk beside someone and become a mentor? Because they may have no clue why they keep stumbling, but if I have learned something and God has guided and directed me, maybe I could come alongside. Maybe I could become a guide in their life. So good. Set your gaze on the path before you. With fixed purpose, look straight ahead, ignoring life's distractions. And then I love this part. I want to share this, and we're going to get into the conversation with Chad. In Proverbs 5, it says this: for God sees, this is Proverbs 5, 21 through 23. I'm reading from the Passage translation. For God sees everything you do, and his eyes are wide open as he observes every single habit you have. Beware that your sins don't overtake you, and that the scars of your own conscience don't become the ropes that tie you up. Those who choose wickedness die for lack of self-control, for their foolish ways lead them astray, carrying them away as hostages. Now listen to this. Kidnapped captives robbed of destiny. Kidnapped captives robbed of destiny. One of the things Chad's going to say, this quote kind of stopped me in my tracks when he said it, is that as he's working among the urban poor, and has for the past 30 years, he said in those situations, he doesn't really have to convince people that life can suck. He tells a story about a mother finding her son dead on her doorstep. He didn't have to convince her that life can suck. He says, all I have to do is just convince people that Jesus is the answer. And I just wonder, as you listen to this, is you may not be in that kind of environment, but the question is this: are there things that are kidnapping your destiny, that are robbing you from becoming who you're born to be? And is it a road? And I'm going to tell you, it's a road paved with a lack of wisdom. You could be listening, in the Bronx. You could be listening in downtown Chicago. You could be listening in Beverly Hills. And here's the deal: is we have different situations, we have different challenges, but we're all people on a journey that often don't know where to go. And what I want to invite you to lean into as you hear Chad's story is that there is a God who is for you, right? He's not against you. He's near you. He's not far away. And he has created you on purpose and for a purpose. And you need mentorship and you need wisdom so you don't get kidnapped and robbed of your destiny, because you have one. And what I love about Chad Temple is he is a guide walking with kids for the past 30 years, helping them not be robbed of their God-given destiny. Do you need wisdom? Do you have wisdom? Do you need a mentor? Could you be a mentor? How could you walk with someone and let them know that God's for them, not against them, near him, not far from you, and has created them for a purpose? So good. Hey, listen, if you've enjoyed listening to the Daron Earlewine podcast over this past year, I want to say thank you for listening, and I want to invite you to come to one step closer with us from being just a listener to becoming an investor. The Daron Earlewine podcast is a ministry of Blackbird Mission, which is a nonprofit ministry I started over 10 years ago with the mission to awaken people to become what they were born to be. And Blackbird Mission exists by the sacrificial and generous support of people just like you. And this summer, we're doing our best to invite some of you to join us to close some of the financial gaps we have in the ministry, to help us to continue to awaken people through different ministry functions and through this podcast. So I'd like you to consider joining us as a monthly investor in the Daron Earlewine podcast at our $40 easy gift plan. It's less than $1, just over $1 a day per month, and you can help us take this message to thousands and thousands of people. You want to check that out? Just go to blackbirdmission.com/give, and then go to the select donation fund. There's a drop-down window that says the Daron Earlewine podcast. If you begin giving and partner with us, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you a free Daron Earlewine coffee mug that says created on purpose and for a purpose. I want you to drink coffee from this and know that you're part of what we're doing and creating every single month. So if you'd like to do that, we'd appreciate it. Head over to the blackbirdmission.com/give, go to the drop-down menu and choose the Daron Earlewine podcast. All right. It's time to get into this interview with the one and only Chad Temple right here on the Daron Earlewine podcast. Hey, welcome back to the Daron Earlewine podcast. Excited to sit down today with my friend Chad Temple. Chad, welcome to the podcast.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Now, Chad, I don't know how we start the conversation. I mean, something like, a man who was supposed to be president of the United States, but then God came in and had other plans, something that dramatic. How do you feel about that?
That would be a little dramatic, but yeah, I had hopes, I had dreams, I wanted to be that. I figured, why not? And I was going to be a lawyer, work my way up, follow all the right political steps, and be president one day. And then he called me another direction. Yeah,
we're going to unpack that journey. One thing I love about it, Chad, and we get so many chances to talk to so many great people on the podcast, is we've talked through so many people, and one of those the common themes, and we can go back to the Bible, right, and find this theme all the time, is that process of resisting, of wrestling, and then of finally coming to a place of submitting, to being like, you know what, God, if I was created on purpose and for a purpose, and you are, a loving, personal God, the best thing I could ever do is actually submit and partner up with where you're taking me. But we sure fight that sometimes, don't we?
Yeah, and I did. But yeah,
We'll jump into it. So tell us a little bit about who you are, Chad. That's the story we're going to go on. Tell us what you do, who you are. Give us a little bit of the vitals of your life.
I'm one of the pastors at a church called The Caring Place. For years, it was known as Calvary Temple over at 30th and Post.
So here in Indianapolis.
Yep, right here in Indianapolis. And I've had the opportunity to be there for now 33 years. Wow. They hired me to, they had just started a program called The Caring Place. Calvary Temple had started a program called The Caring Place. Okay. It was reaching to the at-risk, at that time they call them at-risk, but some of the more difficult neighborhoods in our city. And I had been an intern there for a summer. I'd gone up to New York City. I'm a New Yorker. I'd gone up to New York City. And
where'd you grow up?
Upstate New York in Rochester, but then I moved to Bushwick, Brooklyn. And so if anybody knows Bushwick, you know what it was like in the 80s. It's a little different now. But and so I went there, and then after a few years came back because this church had started a reach program. They wanted to reach into the community. And they asked me to come and run that. And so my wife and I came back. This was her home church, which some people say, oh, that's why you came back. No, that'd have been a reason to not come back.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so we went against those norms, and we did come back, and we've been able to be here and reach into the community, and the Lord's allowed us to, the church has allowed us to. And then the church took on the name of that ministry because in the community, it was more known. Calvary Temple wasn't known. The Caring Place was. And it was just because it had been that much of an outreach. Wow. And so that's where I'm at now. That's still what they're allowing me to do.
I love it, Chad. Let's push rewind then. Let's head back to upstate New York. We joked a little bit. You want to be president of the United States. Take us back, 8, 9, 10-year-old Chad Temple. We sit down with him and say, who is God? Who are you? Take us there.
Well, actually, I'm the grandson of an immigrant. My grandfather came over on the boat, and my grandmother, her parents had come over on the boat.
From what country?
Italy. Okay. Sicily and Italy. Anybody who's out there that knows it, you got to say the difference. My grandmother's Sicilian. My grandfather is Italian. Okay. And my dad was what we used to call a mutt. He was a mix of everything. And so my mom and my dad met. When they met, he wasn't even a Christian. He got saved. I know it's a little further back, but this is what's so key to me. Yeah. My dad got saved because a guy he worked with who was ended up being a missionary to Indonesia. His nickname was Buddy, but when he worked with my dad would crack dirty jokes, and this guy never smiled. And when the guy said, "Hey, I'm going to be preaching. You want to come hear me?" My dad said yes, because that guy had never cracked a smile at a dirty joke. Wow. Isn't that amazing? Huh. And he got in the car because he got picked up because my dad didn't have a license. He had lost it. And so this missionary picked him up, John Brown, and then he picked up two young ladies to go with him, and one of them was my mom. And my mom was a Christian because her mom had gotten saved because she had a vision of Christ. She had been calling out. My aunt was sick, and they were good, strong Catholic people, but there was something more, and that's where my parents come from. Wow. And then they had 6 of us, and I liked law, I liked politics, so I was going to go into law. I wanted to go to William and Mary College. I was going to become a lawyer, make a lot of money, and then go into politics and become president. That's just what I figured I'd do. Now, obviously, that changed a lot. Yeah. But and that really changed when I got saved at the age of when I really gave my heart to Christ in my mid-teenage years. And I noticed that wasn't the way I was going to go. I still acted like it. I still checked into all that, but that wasn't right. And then when I believe God had called me to go in ministry, I tried to hide it for a while because I didn't want, there comes a lot of pressure when you tell people that. Yeah. Even from Christian parents. Yeah. Because they're like, oh, that's really nice, but you have to have something to fall back on. You know, it's like, I'm going to be a musician. You got anything to fall back on? Yeah. It's the same thing. And so I told my parents I'm going off to this college, Central Bible College, and they said, why do you want to go there? I said, because I'm going to be a musician, because that's what I decided. I'll go that way. At least it's a step away from the law thing. Yeah. I was a drummer, so I'll go there, but I got to get my theology right, or I'm going to be like some of these wacko, I don't want to name them here, but a lot of these wacko musicians that became preachers or theologians, so whatever, and you get all these weird gospels out there. So I said, I'm going to get my theology right, and then I'll go into that, knowing I was never going to go that way. So
tell me, let's go back to that sense of calling. What tell me that story. What happened?
in all honesty, it was something that I didn't notice at first. I promise you that. It was just, when I noticed I was called is when I was sitting in a church service and my uncle was preaching.
Okay.
My uncle was a minister in Maryland. They were up in town visiting. So he's preaching at our home church. And I was sitting there, and I don't remember a thing he said because I kept saying, no, God, it ain't going to happen.
Really?
No, God, it ain't going to happen. And that night I talked to he and my aunt, and I said, I think God's calling me. And they were the ones that said, just keep it still, follow it, and see where it goes. And honestly, it's always fallen into place. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And even doing urban, because then I didn't know about urban ministry then. But I met up with a guy named Bill Wilson from Brooklyn, New York, and I heard him preach somewhere, and that made sense to me what he was doing. And so I got linked up with him after going through Bible college, got linked up with him, went up there, and then have been doing the same type stuff everywhere, well, like here.
So you said it was the Bronx that you guys moved to?
Bushwick, Brooklyn, but I worked with the Bronx. I worked in what's called Sidewalk Sunday School in the Bronx. So you have Fort Apache area. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. There's actually an old movie out called Fort Apache, the Bronx. Paul Newman's in it. It starts out with 2 cops getting shot in the head. That's how it starts. And that's what Fort Apache was.
Pretty rough.
But I lived in Bushwick, Brooklyn, which in the 80s was the armpit of the city. Yeah. So, and that's because this ministry wanted to reach to the people that everybody else is throwing away. And the kids had no hope. And that's what I thought, man, that makes so much sense. So I went there to learn everything I could. I told them I'd be up there to get my master's degree. I had already got a bachelor's. I want a master's degree. And it's funny, master's degree are 2-year programs. I worked with them for 2 years, and then it worked around that I came to Indy. And when we came here, in fact, they used to say, why don't you come back to Indy? I said, get a ghetto and I'll come back. Indy does have it. In fact, it's almost more depressing because you could have a $300,000 house across the street from a tenement building. That means that kid knows they're nothing. They know it. As opposed to you're in Bushwick, everything you got is hood, so no one notices, you know. But there or here in Indy, they knew it as pockets, and that's what we still have. You have pockets of the poverty, pockets of the urban centers, and then and so we had the opportunity to come here and work with this, and that's what we've been doing.
So stepping into that kind of ministry, kind of environment, that wasn't abnormal growing up like you did in Brooklyn. Like you just that's what you had.
No, I grew up in Rochester. Now, Rochester, New York is the home of Kodak. Okay. Rochester is upstate. It's on Lake Ontario.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful area. In fact, it's not much different than Indy.
Okay.
In fact, size-wise, about the same.
Okay.
If you look it up, it's not, but that's because Indy did Unigov. Other than that, it's pretty similar. And so, no, that wouldn't have been it. It was just that I always had a desire. In fact, when I was a kid, I remember when my parents moved off of 115 Edgeland Street, that's where I grew up till I was 8 years old. When we moved, I remember thinking, I'm going to go back there, buy that house, and change that one block. And once I change that block, I'll die. I'm good.
Really?
And so, I mean, again, you have all these disparate ideas in your mind, right? And I remember that always just being in the back of my head. Well, I never moved to 115 Edgeland Street, but I did move to something worse. And when I grew up on that street, we had 60 kids on that one city block. So when you got 60 kids on a block, that's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, man, we can make a difference right here.
Yeah.
So in between all that, going, nah, I ain't doing that. I'm making money. That's what I'm gonna do. And then this would be here. No, I'm going to make me some money. And but then this won out. So though I've never gone back there, the things we've done here, that's exactly what the Lord had put in my heart.
I love it. I love it. Once you stepped into that, Chad, I know your parents, were like, hey, fall back on that and whatever. Once you made the move to India, as you started to see the traction of stepping into God's call, what was the reaction from your family, from your parents at that point?
Well, my parents have always been supportive.
Yeah.
Again, they had 6 kids, so they knew. They never told us what we were going to be. They just told us follow Christ.
Okay.
When I've been an intern here in Indy at this church that I'm at now, but when I left here, they had left the question open as to whether I should go to Brooklyn the church did, or come back and fill a position they needed.
Okay.
And I was like, man, I remember telling God, I'm not even talking to you about this. I'm not going to Indy. I'm going to Brooklyn.
Really?
Oh yeah. I said, no, I ain't even talking to you about it. So I didn't. And I left here. I went up home. I'm raising
I
support.
could just see God being like, how's that working out for you, Dad?
Well, I went up home, and then I was like, I talked to my dad. I said, Dad, I can't leave this hanging like this. I can't go somewhere wondering, what does God really want me to do? He said, well, pray about it. So I took a day of just praying, and then he came in, gave me a little advice. I did. I called, talked to local pastor, and he gave me some good advice. And basically both of them led me to go to Brooklyn. Now, my dad didn't want me to go. He said, Chad, if there's anything I'd rather have you do out of the two, I'd rather have you go to Indy. I don't want you going to Bushwick. Bushwick is a pit. I mean, and it was. At the time, it's a lot nicer now. But he said, I don't want you to go there. He goes, but if God's telling you to go there, I don't have a right to stop that. So as a dad, no. But as a dad,
Yeah.
you got to follow God. And so I did. I went there, and they've always been supportive. The coolest thing, though, was I don't think he would even remember it, but he was introducing me somewhere. In fact, it was at my uncle's funeral, his brother-in-law, and he introduced me as his son, who works with inner city kids in Brooklyn, New York. I don't know why I get emotional over that, but it was like he had accepted it. You're doing what God's called you to do, boy. Wow. And it's been that way ever since. Oh, man, they love what we do. Yeah. They support it. They live in upstate New York, Rochester, and they've been supporters of everything I've done financially ever since, just to put into it. They're good. They're good, just good people.
Yeah. I love it, Jed. So you step into that, and then, I mean, we obviously can't tell 30 years worth of stories, but tell us a few. You get down, you begin to understand, to get to know the neighborhood, to get to see what is the same, what is different about Indy. What are those first, maybe 5 years or so as you step into this kind of ministry?
Well, in reality, this is kind of humorous. I came home one day and I said, Cheryl, where is the Hoosier hospitality I always hear about? Because I haven't found it, and she said,
yeah, right. Brooklyn, New York. That's supposed to be like all the cold, mean people, right?
Yeah. Like, man, I ran into nice people that come here. What is going on? And there's just a few things, we won't get into that. But I was like, man, she goes, it's here. And I said, yeah, whatever. So Rochester was voted the friendliest city in the country 10 years in a row. So I was used to friendly people.
Yeah,
it's very multi-ethnic where I grew up. So that's why I come here. I'm like, well, first of all, you don't have that many ethnicities here. 30-some years ago, it was pretty much black and white.
Yeah.
And I said, and I don't see the hospitality. But, of course, that's just humorous. What I found here was really the same thing I found anywhere. My uncle pastored in a rural area, Brooklyn, New York, South Bronx, Harlem, or Indianapolis. What you found was people on a journey that didn't know where to go. And so we just walk alongside them. I never, you know people like this, they have the savior complex, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to save people. Christians, we're coming in to save you. And, they need me. And, I'm filling the role of their dad. Well, you're not. You can't. And you're not. And you're saving nobody. I used to tell our volunteers, don't you ever tell a child that they don't have to live that way. Because they do. They're going home and their parents are having a party in the house and they're getting the effects of whatever. They're living it. So they're going home from having a great spiritual experience to a lesbian act being done on the couch. You can't tell them they don't have to live that way. That is where they live. Now, you don't have to follow that way. But yes, you do have to live there. The beauty is Christ didn't say he'd take you out of the fire or out of the flood. He said he'd walk through them with you. And isn't that the gospel message?
Yeah.
If the gospel was he's going to pull you out of everything, then why are you and I still hearing the crap we go through?
Yeah.
That's the gospel message is Christ lives in you and he lives through you. And so that was our message to the kids. So really, you find everything the same. The quantities are different. You know, there may not be as many people involved in drug use here than there was in Bushwick. I might not find as many people going through DTs on the side of the street. I didn't run into Rastafarians here, to be honest with you. But you still had that same emptiness that leads to that. They just hadn't gotten that far yet, and that's okay. I was able to come here and have an effect on lives, and that's really all we ever wanted. The beauty of it is, I don't know if I'm going too far, if I'm talking too much, but the beauty of it is when you walk into a store and you're going through the checkout line, and this girl looks up at you, she just kind of looks at you, and then you're looking at her, and she keeps looking at you, almost to where it's weird.
Yeah.
And she goes, Caring Place, right? I go, yeah, Caring Place. She goes, man, that's where I know you from. And I said, well, how you doing, hon? And immediately she looked down at something I hadn't even noticed. She was pregnant. And she goes, well, obviously I've screwed up. I said, and? What are you going to do from here? You know, all the visitation we had done at their house, all the bus runs we had done, all the preaching we had done led to that moment. Because I could look at her and say, okay, everything we told you before is true.
Still true.
What are you going to do now? Because Christ is still standing right here. You knew me. Yeah, that and $7 will get you something at Starbucks. But if you know Christ, he takes what you're feeling right now and he turns it into a joy. And that's the beauty of what we got. So the stories, there's millions of them. You walk into Taco Bell, you walk anywhere, you run into people who grew up in the program. Or, like I was talking to Jen a little bit ago, I just did a funeral for a girl who grew up in the program. And she got shot and killed a week and a half ago. But even that, as awful as that is, even that gave me the opportunity to share the gospel message one more time with the whole family. And to have one-on-one with mom and dad and stepdad. And to pray with them, right? That this is what you're about. You set up the opportunity, and you take advantage of the opportunity. Yeah. And that's what you are. That's what you do. That's what Pup Theology is about. Yeah. That's what Wolfies is about. That's what everything's about, right? Yeah. That's what this is about. Yeah. Right.
Chad, how do you? Because I know I love is the distinction you brought that wherever you're at, Brooklyn, Bronx, New York, here, wherever is. You're on a journey with people, right? We're all people. We're on a journey, really trying to find our way, back to God, right? Mm-hmm. But you are in an urban setting. Mm-hmm. If people don't know Indianapolis, the near east side and the east side of Indy, one of the roughest places in our town. Mm-hmm. And in the suburbs, we've got a lack of hope. We just disguise it with nicer clothes and cars and fancier drugs probably, right? Yep. And different addictions. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like if you're a suburban pastor that you don't have to battle to help people find hope because it's still necessary. But after 30 years, serving in more of an urban poor setting, what does that do for your hope? How do you keep it stoked? How do you stay inspired to stay, in the grind? Because
I think it's easier.
Tell me about that.
I don't have to convince somebody who because this happened, who it didn't just happen this year, several years ago, whose son was found with his throat slit on her porch on Mother's Day. Mm. I don't have to convince her that life sucks. Right? That's pretty easy. But in the suburbs, in some of the nicer areas, you got to try to get through that wall of, I got everything, I'm fine. No, I'm telling you, I'm a lazy person. I must be. Because I took the easiest place. I don't have to convince you that life is screwed up. All I got to do is convince you that Christ is the answer. Wow. This is an easier situation. Now, are there people that don't have hope? Yeah. But that's why we stay faithful. Yeah. That's why we have 4 principles that we operate the Caring Place under. And one of them is that God is everything you are and he's nothing you're not. And some people, when I first say it, they go, that's arrogant. No, that's called scripture. because he said we'd be his rep, right? So we're supposed to be that. But you got to remember, we are walking into a community that never asked us to show up. Or I'm knocking on the door that no one asked me to knock on. And I'm telling them, I'm telling you about Jesus. It means I better act like him because I am the one that they see, right? Isn't that what Paul says? So when we're faithful, he's faithful. So, for example, last Friday, it was pouring rain, and we were supposed to be out doing a session, a sidewalk Sunday school session. And you can't do it in the rain. It's outside.
Yeah.
There was no question as to whether we were going to go or not. Yes, it's raining. Yes, we cannot run. There's no question we're going to show up because we promised the kids that if they showed up at the site, they were going to get these Oreo brownies, whatever. It means we had to show up with the Oreo brownie. Now, you go, okay, that's one thing. But no, that's exactly what this thing is about. If we're faithful, that means God's faithful. And that becomes a preaching point.
Yeah.
It show you how much it affects a life. We had a blizzard hit on a Saturday morning in a March several years ago. And all my staff showed up. Now, this is when we were running buses. And we couldn't get the buses out, couldn't get them in the neighborhood. But we took, I think it was Snicker bars that day. We all took Snicker bars. We went out to our neighborhoods, and we knocked on all the doors and gave every kid a Snicker bar. That means we gave away more Snicker bars than we would have because not every kid would have showed up. Yeah. But, okay. And my son, Chad Michael, tells a story. He knocks on the door, and from above in the apartment townhouse, someone yells out, "Who?" And he goes, "It's Chad Michael with the Karen place." He goes, "What?" Chad Michael with the Karen place. So he comes down, and he opens the door, and Chad Michael doesn't talk this way, but he said, "Dad, the guy had a tear in his eye. He was actually beginning to cry." And he said, "This is what makes the Karen place real. Wow. You guys made a promise, and you did it." Now listen, if we hadn't shown up, nobody would have blamed us.
Sure, yeah.
Nobody. But isn't that what Jesus did with the feeding of 5,000? Had Jesus just walked away from all them, who could have blamed him? His cousin had just been killed because of him. So he had unreasonable people he met up with that had an unreasonable request, and he met it. And because he met it, lives could be changed. And we tell this story from here on out.
Yeah.
But that's our point, is that we have to be faithful because Christ was faithful. And if we do that, then now we have something we can talk about. Now we have a God we can talk about because we can tell them that, yeah, we love you. Yeah, we're faithful, but we're nothing compared to God.
I love it.
Because we are going to go home now. I handed you that. I'm going home. Christ never leaves you. Literally never leaves you. And I think sometimes we say that. He literally never leaves you.
Yeah.
And that is mind-blowing. And we try to pump that into the kids. So
I love it, Chad. It's so good that just the idea of that unreasonable expectation. It's an unreasonable love, you know what I mean, that we receive. And one of the things I was so excited to partner with you guys this past Christmas. And
we were too. We were excited you partnered with us.
Well, it was a blast. And what we're able to do with the Christmas store, in which you guys unpack. You guys have been doing the Christmas store for how many years?
I think it's 24.
24 years.
I lost track, but yeah.
So unpack what the Christmas store is all about.
Well, we had a really dumb idea. Okay, we're straight with you. And what we wanted to do is we wanted the kids to learn the value of money, the value of time. We just wanted to take everything to the next level.
Yeah.
So we said, well, how about we allow them to earn? We called them Zunes because Zaboomafoom was the big show at the time, and so a Z word sounded cool, so we called them Zunes. And Zaboomafoom is gone, and Zunes are still here. But so that was our currency, and they could earn them for doing memory verses, or they could earn them for being present, for winning a game, whatever. And all we were going to do is at Christmas time we were going to set up some folding tables at the Karen Place, which at the time was 22nd and College. In fact, if you go to 22nd and College on the northwest corner, there's still a building with a mural going around it. That was our building. We don't own it anymore. The people who bought it just have left our mural on. But that's where we brought all the kids. We were going to set up tables, have things out on table, kind of like a typical church thing, and do that. And we went, nah, we don't want to do that. And we were working with another lady, and we actually, right up here at Keystone at the Crossing, there was old Joseph A. Bank, store that closed. It was up the top of the escalator. And they said, you could use that if you want. So we bust loads of kids to Keystone at the Crossing on our very first one. That was insane, dude. I ain't gonna lie to you. But we did that. You've seen people's looks. And all these kids came walking up, and they turned in their Zunes, and they went shopping. We wanted it to be a shopping experience. We didn't want – everybody helps parents get stuff for kids. We wanted the kids to understand the thrill of giving. And so we allowed them to earn their points, their Zunes, and then they could spend their Zunes purchasing stuff. And I always tell the story from that year where a girl was coming through and she only had so many Zunes left to either get this boom box for herself, shows you how many years ago it was, boom box for herself, or an item for her mom. I don't remember what that was. And the shopper looked there and said, you only got enough for one or the other. She put her thing back, got the thing for her mom. And rightfully, that shopper took the boom box, put it in her bag, and said, you learned it.
Yeah.
You didn't earn it, you learned it.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be. So, and so it's just grown ever since then. And this last year, with your guys' help, we had, oh my gosh, so many bikes. I forget the number now. It was a record number of bikes. And is that what it was? You guys gave us 20. But because of your 20, we ended up with a record number. You guys nailed it for us, I'm telling you. And I will tell you, I don't know if you knew this. I don't know if I told you this. But we can only put out so many at a time because we're bringing kids all through. You got to make sure that they last for all the kids. Because we had, I think it was 1,400 kids come through this year. And so and by the way, that's not just our kids. The kids we work with make up a good number of that. But we work with 12 other agencies, and they're doing knockout work out there. And so we help them. We just found out from one agency that's just citywide known, said that we handle 98% of their Christmas help. We're the ones to supply it.
Wow.
So
That's
thank
awesome,
you.
Jeff.
But anyway, so we were figuring out how many can we take out. Darren and Lauren, you know them.
Yeah.
They were the ones kind of working with that. So we're figuring numbers. Okay, Sharon, the girl, we're going, okay, do we have enough? Can we do whatever? And I went, yeah, pull out a few more. And there was a young man standing behind me, 15-year-old kid. I hadn't even noticed him, right? There were so many kids coming through, and I was handling problems. And when they bring it out, what they said was a look of relief came on him, and he bought the bike. It was the first bike he had ever owned.
Wow.
He's 15 years old. That's because of you guys that he could do that. That's the kind of cool thing that happens. We saw parents driving up Post Road because we didn't bus any kids in, so parents had to bring them this time. And again, it comes through us and organizations we partner with, so it's not random people off the street, but we don't have the ability to do that. But anyway, so this mom was driving up the road only going about 5 miles an hour. And my son was behind, one of my kids was behind her going, what are you doing? He looked, there's a kid on the sidewalk on Post Road riding his bike. And the mom was making sure he was okay because she couldn't fit it in the car. So she was riding alongside him as he went to 42nd and Post, which is the famous or infamous area of our city.
Yeah. Chad, I love that story. It was such a phenomenal day. I got to bring my youngest son down, and he got to serve with us and shop with kids. And it was one of the most beautiful things to see the kids. Like, they did buy something for themselves, but to see the joy of them understanding what it meant to actually shop and give back to their families, and to be able to know that they were helping provide from that. The pride, the dignity of that was powerful. I was so happy that we could partner with you guys. It was a joy for our whole ministry and for my family. And what I wanted to talk about kind of as we land the plane is one of the things that grew up in Arizona personally, and much more of a racially diverse area where I grew up. My high school was the most racially diverse high school in our district. My grandma, who lived in Southern Illinois, and I don't know if there was even an African-American family in her whole town, right? And she would always joke when she would come out to visit us, she would like, Darren, when your friends come over, it's like your house becomes the United Nations, you know, because I had Black friends, I had Korean friends, I had Hispanic friends, and that was my norm. I've been here in Indianapolis since 2000. That is not normative in the Midwest, or at least not in Indy. My take is that a portion of what I see as far as racial prejudiced. A lot of it is, I think, ignorance based, and the fact that, and we can unpack, systems and structures that have made our city grow as segregated as it is. But as you're working with, a predominantly, African American or people of color, demographic, I would say probably on the east side, what do you think needs to happen? And this is a huge question, I know that, so forgive me for asking a huge question, but what do we need to do to see our city and maybe other cities start to look more like the kingdom of God is supposed to look?
Well, first of all, the east side is very white and black, but it's also become extremely Hispanic, and the Haitian population has grown huge. In one of the sites we were at just Saturday, I asked how many kids here speak Creole and Haitian Creole, and over half the hands went up. I was like, wow, and which is good because we have a volunteer with us who is Haitian and speaks Creole. Yeah. So that helped. Yeah. Not so much with the kids, but with the parents.
Yeah.
The answer I'm going to give you, somebody out there is going to call it a simplistic answer.
Okay.
Okay. But that's only, I hope this is not rude, but that's only out of ignorance. The difference between simplistic and simple is having worked through it. Okay. So a simplistic answer is Jesus loves me. Okay. That could be a simplistic answer until you work through what that means for Jesus to love you. Yes. Now the gospel is Jesus loves me. There's a difference.
Yes.
Okay. So the answer I'm going to give you, somebody listening is going to say, that's just simplistic. Okay. The problem I think we have is that we're always looking for the silver bullet or the home run hit that's going to make everything different because we've been Disney programmed. Wonder Woman is going to fight Ares and destroy him and everything's going to be good. Rocky is going to come back from almost being knocked out, beat up the bad guy, and everything's going to be good.
Yeah. All in 2 hours.
Oh, it's amazing. The problem is it's not how it works.
Yeah.
But the Christian world is always looking for that. How many times has the Christian churches all get together behind a big event that's going to happen, and then nothing really eternal happens out of it? I've been involved in those. I've led some of those. That's why I don't do many of them anymore, because it's exciting, but you've just put all these hours and all this effort into something that eternally didn't have much of an effect. So I'm going to give you the answer that I live by.
Okay.
I cease to be racist. I know that sounds stupid, but listen, what it means is that when I'm walking into a gas station, I hold the door open for people. I don't open for a black person or a white person, a Spanish person, Creole person. They're right behind me, and I just hold the door open. Why? Because that's what you do. I don't have to have a big event. Everybody sit down and let's talk about our racial problems. Although that's good and that's important, and do that. But in between those events, the reason we have to keep having those things is because nothing is different in between them. Why? I'm not going to tell you that I don't notice people's color because that's stupid.
Right.
And
it's almost disrespectful, right? It's like there's a uniqueness to color, to culture, to everything that's able to.
But it can't dictate how I respond.
There we go.
Here's the difference. I come from an Italian. I'm half Italian and half non, and so that means I grew up with a certain flavor. Okay, I ate pasta every Sunday. Did you?
No.
Okay, so I ate pasta every Sunday. I got a family pasta recipe. Do you?
No.
No.
It's called ragu.
Oh, dear God. Not that one. I'll give you a better one than that. I'll give you mine, and then I'll tell you where you could buy better ones than that. But,
I like it.
Ragu used to be made in my hometown.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It stunk the worst in that area. So I'm not kidding. It's the worst. But anyways, sorry, Ragu. Man, that threw me off because that sounds horrible. But anyway, so you have, we have different flavors, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. My buddy, Glenn Palmer, he's an African-American guy. We were partners in the Karen place for years, 20-some years. When he made greens, they were hot, had ham hock in it, and delicious. When I make greens, they have garlic and onion and olive oil in them, and they got some heat to them, and they're same greens, taste different. That's actually okay. For him, macaroni and cheese is a main dish. For me, it doesn't even show up. Okay? Chitlins, I'm never going to eat them. I don't think even he eats them, but that's a common African-American food. Yeah. So my point is, we can be different. It's okay if we look at the difference as just being flavoring.
Yeah.
Because we're really all the same. And so if you want to really defeat racism, quit being racist, either to the positive side or the negative side. Don't walk in. I know people that feel, like I told you, I'm here, and it's the white person. I'm here to help the black people. Really? What do they need your help doing? What can you do that they can't do? Stop it. Now, what you can do is walk alongside somebody who's confused about what's my next step.
There we go.
But do you ever get confused that way? I do.
Yeah.
Has it helped you when someone comes along?
Yeah.
Sure. But that's not because they're saving me. It's because they have more knowledge than I do. I would love to do this kind of stuff. I'd love for you to help me, right? Because you have more knowledge than me. But hopefully I have more knowledge than you in another area. And then that's why we work together. It doesn't mean I'm saving you, you're saving me. What it means is we're going through life together.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. So it sounds like a simplistic answer. Whatever you're doing, like, don't look at everything through the eyes of race.
Yes.
Just look at people.
Yeah.
And again, there's going to be people out there who deal with this issue all the time, say, Pat Shedd, you just blew it and you messed it up. Okay, but you tell me what wouldn't be changed by that. If we all honestly live that way, you tell me what wouldn't be changed by that.
Yeah.
And I'll agree with you that I was wrong.
Yeah.
But when you can't tell me that, you have to agree that I'm right.
The reality, though, Chad, is a story you just told about Glenn, like that story about you knowing how he likes to make his greens, like you only know that because you had a long-term relationship with him. And I think that may be simplistic, but that's also a part of it of like, make friends with people that don't just look like you. Mm-hmm. But I almost feel like we're digressing into more of a tribal type, simplicity right now that I think is unbelievably dangerous.
It is. And what's really exciting for me, though, is that the Christians I hang out with, they're fighting that. They're people like an Anthony Beverly. He runs a ministry called Stop the Violence in Indianapolis. Yep. Just a wonderful guy. He's also a black gentleman. And my dad's a hero in my life. My grandfather, I have some uncles, and Anthony Beverly is one of the heroes in my life, to be honest with you. But he's fighting against that. But not only that, we're fighting against it together because there have been times that I've gone to him and said, Anthony, I don't understand this. Actually, I'm a little upset about this. Something that may have happened in the city or something that idea that came down. He goes, well, that makes sense, Chad. No, it doesn't. And then we talk about it. He explains it, and I go, oh yeah, that makes good sense. And it's because we are willing to have the conversation and willing to say, oh, maybe I am thinking about it wrong. Because it's not about, in the Christian world especially, it shouldn't be about whether I'm right or not.
Yes.
It should be about what is true. And we need to be fighting for what's true. That means that at times, because I'm not God, I'm going to look stupid. Get over it.
Yeah.
You're going to look stupid. And so will they next time. So it's not that big a deal. And surround yourself with people who are better than you. I learned that as a leadership principle. An army of lions led by a lamb can do a whole lot more than an army of lambs led by a lion. Okay, so in the same way, I try to surround myself with people who are a lot better than me at everything, because then it's easy for me, right? I'm just like, hey guys, let's go.
Yeah.
And so I have surrounded myself with friends who understand some of these issues a lot better than me because of where they're at. I understand them from being involved in neighborhoods, but I'm still not a black person. And that whole thing of intersectionality that's out now, it actually started out as a good concept. It's gone whack now. The good concept was understanding that different things affect different people. I am of Italian-American descent. I also said Sicilian because there's a difference. My dad is a mutt, but he's German, Irish, American, all this kind of stuff. You are from Arizona. It means you have a different attitude towards the heat we're about to hit than I do because I'm from upstate New York. Yeah. I hate what's coming. You're like, cool, right? Okay, so we all have a different thing. So I'm going to be in a bad mood one day when it's 98 degrees, 100% humidity, and you're like, what's your problem, Chad? Well, maybe not humidity side, but with me, I'm in a bad mood. Okay, because things have affected us differently. But when we start trying to use that as a way of saying, I'm better than you because I'm more victimized than you, that's just stupid. And in the Christian world, we should never do that. And that's what we're talking about here. Anybody, I'm for talking to the world and all like that, but in the Christian world, we got to get our junk straight. Jesus is the answer. The gospel is about Jesus. You cannot live for him without him, and you cannot be what he wants you to be without him. So stop. Stop with all of our Dr. Oz sermons and our Dr. Phil sermons. Get back to the fact Jesus is the answer. And there is nothing in simplistic, no, real. That he is the only way. He's the only way we're going to unite. He's the only way we can have a message that has any meaning. He's the only way, and his message is the only thing that's going to change a life. Because I can help a kid never go to jail. And that only has an effect until he dies. And he still goes to hell. So, God bless you. You kept him out of jail. But if I can get him to meet up with Jesus Christ, I have a story I tell all the time, but I was doing a chapel service in Marion County Jail. It's been years ago, and I said, how many of y'all heard of the Karen Place? I'm with Karen Place. All these hands go up. My grandkids go, my kids go, whatever. The guy in the back said, I think I told you this. The guy in the back yelled out, Pastor Chad, I used to go. You know, things go through your head fast. What went through my head was, that's a horrible testimony for the Karen Place. Oh, we look stupid. And then I blamed the Lord, but something came across my mind. I said, well, either I didn't preach it or you weren't listening. He said, I wasn't listening, but I am now. Okay. So I didn't keep him out of jail. And if that's what I'm trying to do, I failed. But that's not what I'm trying to do. I want him to meet Jesus.
Yeah.
So I didn't fail. Do you see the point?
Yeah.
We are trying as the church to have the same effect on lives that the secular organizations have. Why? That's so short. That's so nothing. Have the effect on them that their eternity is different. And you'll see if they're aiming towards Christ, they're going to change all this other stuff. And even if they go through it, they'll be okay.
Chad, I love it. I love your passion. And even more than that, what I love is your perseverance and your faithfulness that you have poured into this community, you know, for over 30 years. You don't see that very often. And I want to thank you personally. I can't speak for our city, but our city thanks you. And keep it up because you're doing amazing work. And the phrase that you just said, I love it. I think it applies to you is Chad Temple, like simplistic, no, real, yes. And it's been a joy to have you on the podcast.
Good being here. Thank you. You're awesome. I love what you guys do.
Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it, man. And we're back. What a journey with Chad Temple. You kidding me? Crowd going wild for Chad Temple. I love it. I apologize for the ragu situation. I didn't know about it. I'm not Italian. I don't know about ragu, pregu, whatever you need. I got to get Chad's recipe, figure out how we make the spaghetti go next level. But listen, guys, I said it to begin with. If there's a quote that I think could sum up Chad Temple, it's this: a long obedience in the same direction. It's a book titled by Eugene Peterson of the same title there, right? And it just jumped out to me as I was listening and reflecting upon what Chad's story is. To be at the same ministry for 30 years in the same neighborhood, building relationships, being a guide, being a mentor for 30 years, you don't hear that very often. A lot of times in ministry circles, church circles, and you know, even nonprofit circles, people, they do this for a little bit, maybe 4 or 5 years here, 4 or 5 years here. They bounce all over the country, but they don't have this long-term impact. But that's Chad Temple. That's Chad Temple. And here's what I want to ask you is what could be said about you? Who are you guiding? What eternal impact are you having? And as you look at your life, would you say, you know what? Here's what's happening is I'm having a day-by-day long obedience in the same direction. As that quote came to me, I went and grabbed a couple quotes actually from Eugene Peterson's book of that title because I felt like maybe God was inviting me into it. And I love these quotes that I found, and I think they apply to what we just heard from Chad. Eugene Peterson says this: there's a great market for religious experience in our world. There is little enthusiasm for the patient acquisition of virtue. That's good. Little inclination to sign up for a long apprenticeship in what earlier generations of Christians called holiness. Religion in our time has been captured by the tourist mindset. Religion is understood as a visit to an attractive site to be made when we have adequate leisure. And I want you to just take some minute to reflect after we finish the podcast here is what could be said about your life? Would people come to your life, and at this point, would they be able to say, fill in the blank with your name? That is a long obedience in the same direction. That person is becoming who they were born to be, little by little, and they have a inclination for a long apprenticeship to Jesus. Or for you, are you at a place where you're like, you know what, I'm not sure what I want to do, Daron. I mean, I eventually I think I may have time to make an impact. But right now, I'm getting my education. Right now I'm starting a family, and right now it's tough. I got a lot of stuff I got to do. And when I have time, I'll start mentoring people. When I have time, I'll start serving. When I have time, I'll start really growing in my faith. Well, here's the deal. You don't know how much time you have. Do you? You don't. None of us do. You don't know how much time you have. All you know is you have one life. And it was created on purpose and for a purpose, and I want to encourage you not to waste it. Not to waste it. I talk about it from time to time about, like, just imagine real quick, imagine being at your funeral. And I'm not trying to make it like sad or whatever, right? No scariness. But here's the deal. We're going to die and there's going to be a funeral. I just wonder, are you living your life to where good stories will be told about you? I guarantee you when Chad Temple dies, there's going to be a church full of people that are brokenhearted, but are going to be there to celebrate the life of a long obedience in the same direction in the thousands and thousands of kids' lives that he changed. Not just to keep them out of prison like he talked about, but no, to actually see them become what they were born to be and step into a relationship with Jesus. To experience, here's the deal, that sometimes life sucks, but Jesus is the answer because he's actually in me and working through me, and I'm never alone. He's always near me. He's always for me. What can be said about you? I want you to chew on that one for a little bit. I love when Chad talked about, right, that he wants to do eternally more than just keep kids out of prison, right? He doesn't want to meet a kid and say, hey, it's awesome. Hey, you didn't go to jail, but guess what? You didn't become who God created you to be. Yeah, you didn't go to jail, but you ruined your life, or you just didn't live it. You just existed. Or, yeah, hey, great, well, you didn't go to jail because we impacted your life, but you're not going to actually be eternally connected to the God that loves you and created you and died for you. On that thought, Eugene Peterson says it like this: rescue me from the one who tells me of life and omits Christ, who is wise in the ways of the world and ignores the movement of the Spirit. Rescue me from the one who tells me about life but omits Christ. As Chad said, right? It's this simple but not simplistic answer that Jesus is actually the answer. Because when we actually understand our God-given worth, we will actually start changing our world. We will start seeing the worth that every single person has, as Chad talked about, the image of God. No matter your skin color, no matter your culture, whatever, you are created in the image of God. And when we're around people that may say, hey, here's some thoughts, that this is some wisdom, but the core of it, they're omitting Christ. That he is the creator and sustainer of all things, that he actually created you on purpose and for a purpose, and he invites you into a relationship where he walks actually with you and his Spirit is through you, so that you can join him and create the future that's currently on his mind and on his heart. If you've been giving a script of life that omits that, reject that. I pray that you're rescued from it, because that is not the life you were created for. One of the last quotes I'll give you from Eugene Peterson that I think fits in with this from his book is this: every relationship that excludes God becomes oppressive. You might need to chew on that one for a minute. Let that marinate. Every relationship that excludes God becomes oppressive. And so if we look around our world and we see a lot of oppression, and we see a lot of injustice, then what we may be actually seeing is the lack of God. The lack of God because we're not at a place where we're actually having an inclination to sign up for a long apprenticeship in what earlier generations of Christians have called holiness. The patient acquisition of virtue, a long obedience in the same direction. I want to live my life well. I want to live it with Christ at the center because I want to end it and I want to have an impact like Chad Temple, who, you know what, he could have gone, gotten his law degree, done that, become president of the United States. I'm not saying that he wouldn't have had an impact on what else, the dreams he had in his life. He would have. But when you spend some time around him, you see the impact he had, you know he's right where he's supposed to be, showing up every day with consistency and love and pointing kids and their families to truth. Such a joy to have him on the podcast today. Chad, thank you so much for your example, for your inspiration, and would love to hear from you. If maybe one of these quotes, one of these thoughts jumped out at you and you want to discuss it more, send me an email, Daron@blackbirdmission.com. You can also text me, 317-550-5070. Would love to engage in conversation with you guys about what we're talking about today. And maybe you're listening and you say, you know what, Daron, here's what I need. I need a little bit more. I don't believe that God is with me. I don't believe the things that you're saying, that God is near, that he's for me, that he's near me, that he's created me on purpose and for a purpose. Listen, I want to send you my free ebook called God is Near. Quick read, 20 minutes at tops. And I want to send it to you for free right now. Just go to DaronEarlewine.com/GodIsNear. Give me your email address and we'll send you a copy of the book and you can download it for free. Once again, DaronEarlewine.com/GodIsNear. Just like that, we're at the end of another episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thanks for downloading. Please leave us a review, subscribe to the channel so we can continue to grow the audience and remind people every single week, like we do with you, that God is for you, not against you. He's near you, he's not far away, and he's created you on purpose and for a purpose. Thanks for downloading, guys. Love you. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week right here on the Daron Earlewine Podcast.